That's been a great
What was that piece for you when you were new to jiu-jitsu? Like, what really excited you about the sport?
Man, a lot of things excited me. I liked that it was just so different than what I thought martial arts was going to be.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Alpra.
Hey guys, welcome to the Essential Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Mccaghren. The Essential Jiu-Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about jiu-jitsu. Today I have a very special guest, 10th Planet Black Belt and known grappling personality, Brandon Mccaghren. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Howdy. What's going on?
Not much. Thanks for coming. Guys, before we get started, just want to let you know if you want to support the show, check out the links in the bottom. If you want merchandise, check out our online store. You can now donate to the show through my PayPal, which is also linked in the bottom. All right. So, Brandon, this is the first time you've been on the show. I know you've been on BJJ Mental Models before. I first actually knew who you were. We previously discussed when Royler fought Eddie Bravo twice, and then you you made the song I Dominated Eddie, which is absolutely amazing. That's the first time I kind of got introduced to you. Is that you playing guitar on the track?
Yeah.
Pretty good. So, oh my God, I got this cat.
It's like,
That's pretty funny. In that match, actually, if for those who haven't seen it, I recommend you do. It was a great match. Basically, Royler was just in Eddie Bravo's lockdown and just kept trying to pressure through the lockdown, I guess, and just wasn't getting anywhere. Instead of actually untangling the lockdown, which, I mean, I guess Eddie Bravo's lockdown is about as good as it gets. I mean, I don't come forward in the lockdown. I kind of like sit back and try and entangle before I come forward, but it just ended up with Eddie. I think he roll underneath and he got to like a vaporizer, right? And then and then as the song goes, he blew out his own knee and all this stuff. So
that was a fun moment. I was a purple belt when that happened.
You were a purple belt during that.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Did you know anything about Eddie Bravo's preparation for that match or what that looked like?
Oh yeah, we all have like a group chat going. All the 10th Planet guys have a group chat going. And so we were in deep, just following it close. Cause that was a big moment for us. This was he was a fluke or whatever. That's what everybody was saying. And so it was huge for the 10th Planet community. And that was a real like turning point for the whole 10th Planet like association, honestly. It went from if you do 10th Planet, you're a fraud, to people secretly calling you to get private lessons to take back to their gym, but they can't tell, they're not allowed to tell anybody they're learning now. And so it's slowly, that's where it really started the ball rolling for the big growth of 10th Planet, I think.
Yeah, that was on Metamoris, right? That was the platform. That was on Metamoris, was still a thing. For those who don't know, Eddie Bravo had a huge upset win years ago against Royler Gracie at ADCC. He triangled him, and everyone said it was a fluke, and so they made this rematch. And even though the second match was ruled a draw, I mean, in my opinion, it's pretty obvious that Eddie had all of the offense, even though I think to an untrained eye, it would look like Royler was kind of smashing him from the top. He wasn't really, he didn't pass the guard or anything. He got swept. He got his guard passed, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And did he get his guard passed?
He got around to side control on him and almost took his back. He almost put him in the twister. Like it was very close to being in a twister.
Plus, he had that vaporizer attempt, so he had him in it's like a modified calf slicer. So I think it's pretty funny. Didn't Hoist come up to Eddie after and said he dominated you and all that stuff? That's where the song comes from.
He tried to start a fight with him backstage. It was crazy. I wasn't there, so I just said, going on the reports. But he tried to start a fight with him. Eddie's puking in the garbage can, and Hoist is trying to fight him. And then it was the Gracie boys the next day, like Henner and Heron, I think it was. They released like a video kind of breaking down how Royler had dominated him, and so that's that night, I watched that video. I was like, okay, this will be fun. And so
Yeah.
I just recorded it on my phone. It's not a very well technically produced piece of music, but it was fun.
No, I disagree. It's hilarious. How did you get into martial arts, Brandon?
I was fat, and my wife told me that I better lose some weight. She sat me down on the couch, and she was like, "Hey, listen, I didn't marry you so I could spend the last 20 years of my life as a widow. I'm signing us up for martial arts classes." We were big UFC fans already. I've been watching the UFC since I was like 13 years old. So, but strictly just from a wow, this is incredible kind of perspective. Never really had that much interest in martial arts.
So,
but
Jiu-Jitsu was your first martial art?
Tang Soo Do was my first martial art. And so that's what we originally signed up for. But they had grappling there. So the guy who was the Tang Soo Do coach, the Tang Soo Do, the Sabonim, he was, and he is like a phenomenal, super well-rounded martial artist. His name is Jamie Webster. He's like a hero of mine. But he was like super high rank in Tang Soo Do, but he also dabbled in like boxing and Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu and all kinds of different things, sword, you know what I'm saying? Like he just likes martial arts. And so kind of what he would do is, all right, you're here at the school, you're going to get your black belt in Tang Soo Do. That's what you're going to do your ranking in. But I want to expose you to all these other avenues of martial arts, and whichever one interests you, he would just encourage you to like go deep down that path. And jiu-jitsu was the one. Well, MMA, we called it NHB and Vale Tudo back then, but he was like, yeah, you should dig in if that's what excites you about martial arts. He's like, just go do martial arts, get excited about martial arts. And so that's what I did. And Lindsay and I, my wife, we got our black belts in Tang Soo Do, and we were getting ranked in jiu-jitsu through Eddie at the same time. So I got my black belt in Tang Soo Do and my purple belt in 10th Planet on the same weekend. So we were just kind of working through the ranks there.
Nice. What about like the striking arts? Did that not really interest you as much?
Oh no, I did a lot of striking. Just there wasn't like a place to like, okay, I'm going to learn Muay Thai. There wasn't really a place to learn Muay Thai out here. And it didn't interest me as much. But yeah, I always, like my introduction to jiu-jitsu was really from, like it always had striking in it for my first couple of, like you were always allowed to like at least simulate strikes while you were grappling. It was just like a part of fighting, but it was the part that excited me the most. So I just like went down that rabbit hole, you know?
Mm-hmm. What is like a piece of advice that you would give someone who just got into jiu-jitsu, who just got introduced, and maybe they're like really, when you see that student who you can see it in their eye that they see themselves doing this for a long time, they get excited about it, and as an instructor, you're like, okay, this student is in, like the first phase of like, should I do this or should I not do this is over, and now it looks like they're ready to commit some time to this. What kind of advice would you give someone at that level?
Just do what excites you. Like whatever it is, like what's the one ingredient that everybody needs, no matter what methodology they choose on how to get better, how to learn, whatever. What's the one ingredient that everybody has to have to get good? It's just got to do this all the time for a long time, right? And the best way to do that is to focus on the things that make you want to show up and do the work. And so I hear everybody like, what should I focus on? What do I need to learn? What should I make? What's my game? Like, don't worry about any of that is what I would say. I would say there's so much to learn that whatever part makes you want to show up and get you excited to come in and outwork your peers, that's the part you need to focus on. And if that focus shifts, then let your focus shift over to doing the new thing. Like, I'm excited about rubber guard. Hey man, go work on the rubber guard. Whatever makes you outwork your peers. Because you're going to have to show up all the time for a long time to get good. And that's really the recipe. And if being excited about the mount or leg locks or whatever it is what makes you want to show up and do more work and better work than the people around you, then just focus on that. And that's what I've always done. That's been a great
what was that piece for you when you were new to jiu-jitsu? Like, what really excited you about the sport?
Man, a lot of things excited me. I liked that it was just so different than what I thought martial arts was going to be. Like, I thought it was going to be, doing forms and fighting, and I didn't understand like how like psychologically, like how mentally challenging that it was going to be. And that's still my favorite part is it's art. It's half martial, it's half art. But I'm way more drawn to the art side of it than to the martial. I like the martial. It has to be martial at the end of the day, but I also just like the self-expression part of jiu-jitsu the best.
It's a good answer that you had. Now that I'm sort of I don't know. I guess you're in your, what are you, in your late 30s, or how old are you?
God bless you. I'm 44. I'm about to be 40.
Yeah, so I'll be 36 next month, and I always talk to beginners.
It's close.
You're
getting close. It's gonna be old soon,
dude. I'm already feeling it. I have injuries and whatnot, and I always talk to new guys about like maintenance with your body, and just, it's fun now, especially for the young kids that come in and all they want to do is scrap. I'm like, right now you're not feeling it. Even if you pop something, usually it's better by next week. But as you get into your mid 30s, you just start to feel things more. You start to recognize you're more brittle, and your things can get injured more easily. So I always discuss longevity as something to sort of strive for from a beginning phase. Do you think that like a new athlete coming in, let's say they're really excited with like leg locks, it's like a new white belt, right? And they've got some talent. They're like, oh man, like I love leg attacks. Because nowadays, especially in a no-gi situation, if you're not learning, even like a basic straight ankle lock, I think it's pretty necessary, even at the fundamental phase, to understand how an ankle lock works. But let's say you have a white belt who really takes a liking to leg locks, and they're not focusing so much on like the fundamental positional part of jiu-jitsu. Would you encourage them to just stick with that and pursue that? Or would you say, listen, we need to focus on things like guard retention and, distance management and things like this?
I think it depends on what their goal set is. Like, if you're just coming in to learn because you think jiu-jitsu is cool and you need some exercise or whatever, then I don't think it really matters which part you focus on. The part you should focus on is the part that makes you want to practice, the part that gets you excited to practice. Now, if you come in and you tell me, hey, dude, I want to be as good as I can possibly be at this thing as fast as possible. Well, we got a different set of standards on what your practice looks like. We got a different set of curriculum that we're going to try to run you through. I'm going to get you off of those leg locks early, and I'm going to run you through how to control. We're going to try to deepen your understanding of leverage and patience and timing and body weight distribution and positional control, how to score, how to win the game. But that's not most people. And that's not most students that walk through these doors. That is some students that walk through. They're like, Nakia Jackson, Travis Thomas, they want to be the best in the world in their weight class. Well, then practice looks different for you. You come to practice. You don't come to your hobby. Like that's, to me, like taking a new guy and saying that you've got to focus on doing it in this specific order. That's like telling him how he's got to, like what order he has to learn guitar in. Like, I don't know, like there's a lot of parts of the guitar that you could learn and focus on. You could be the acoustic guy, you could be the electric guy, you could be the guy who just sits and runs scales, you could be the guy who turns into a singer-songwriter. There's a lot of different ways to chunk out this guitar hobby. And if you're not trying to be a professional musician, whatever makes you want to practice, just go learn guitar, dude. Spend some time with it, enjoy it, move your hand around the fretboard and just see what noises you can make. No problem. But if you've got like big goals, then yeah, we're going to have to set up some structure to this thing.
When did you know you wanted to teach jiu-jitsu?
Man, I got thrust into the teaching position not forced, but like opportunity as a blue belt, like, because there was no still no other jiu-jitsu school in my county, like not just my city, but the entire county. So it's an hour to drive anywhere to even practice jiu-jitsu. And that's what all the schools that have popped up, it's still an hour away. And so at that time in Alabama, there were 3 black belts in the entire state when I started learning. Like there was really nobody to learn from. And so, and we weren't a jiu-jitsu school. We were a Tang Soo Do school. We were a traditional martial arts school, but we had a grappling class. And so by the time I got my blue belt from Eddie, that's when I started teaching a little more regularly. And, you're a blue belt. Nobody's like driving big hours to come and think that they're going to get to the world title learning from a blue belt. But I got a lot of great experience on how to structure class and how to run the class, and what that looked like is how do I train, get better, and teach these guys at the same time while the stakes were really low. So I'm actually really thankful for all those opportunities to teach that Jamie gave me to teach as a new guy.
Mm-hmm. What was your previous career, if you don't mind me asking, before martial arts?
So I have a bachelor's in theology, and I have a bachelor's in business administration. I came out of college and I was working as a youth minister at a church. And so I was just like helping kids mostly. And I did that for 8 years. And then I quit that to play music. I played music. Like I just drove around and played my guitar for like a year and a half. And yeah, that's kind of what I did before I went all in on jiu-jitsu.
But then you got into teaching martial arts and you're like, this is better than any normal job I think I can find.
Yeah, it's way better than trying to play guitar at coffee shops and bars.
Yeah. I mean, I love the life too. I love teaching and sharing and running, trying to make money through jiu-jitsu. What does your class structure look like? Like, let's say you're teaching an advanced class. I assume, your 10th Planet, you don't teach gi or anything, right? Although I have seen some pictures with you in a gi. So do you have previous gi training?
Hey, don't tell anybody about that, dude. You're going to ruin
it's on Google.
ruin my rep, dog. So the way I structure class, I don't train in the gi at all. I'll wear a gi. Like I like the gi, to be honest with you. I just feel like there's so much still for me to try to grasp on no gi that I feel like that knowledge pool is infinite. So I'm not necessarily trying to dive into another knowledge pool. But if like me and my wife, we'll come up and we'll wear our gi. Sometimes we just come to open mat and I'll roll in the gi. But so people will be grabbing my gi, but I won't be grabbing theirs. But I don't do that too much, especially now. But no, I've gotten all my jiu-jitsu ranks from Eddie, but I go to anybody that's smart. It's going to be teaching a seminar. I don't care what kind of uniform he's wearing. I'm trying to go, like Carlos Machado's 2 hours away. I don't care if it's a gi seminar. I'm trying to go learn. So I've had a lot of cool opportunities. Just like I've gotten to train with Hickson once at each belt level, always in the gi. Always learn something like incredible to take away and do with no gi, because it's always principled stuff, right? So I think if you learn jiu-jitsu well, and if you learn to listen well, that it doesn't really matter if they're teaching it to you in the gi or in no gi. Like, I'm not teaching you where to put your leg when you do an arm lock. I'm teaching you about leverage. I'm teaching you about weight distribution. If you could take the principled lesson away from the specific lesson, then you learn everything as you learn anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, how long are your classes? Like hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah. What you actually asked me was, how do I structure class? I got distracted. So, okay. The way I do it, I do everything in a 1 month curriculum. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm structuring in 8 classes over the course of a month. So I'm assuming the average student is going to make it in twice a week. They're going to get in on, let's just call it Tuesday and Thursday nights, and that's going to be their regular schedule. So I want to have a really structured curriculum for those 8 classes so that you're going to get the most value and you're going to enjoy your time the most, so that you show up all the time for a long time. Over the course of 1 month, let's just take the deep half guard as our example. This month's curriculum is on the deep half guard. Regardless of how you feel about the deep half guard, we're going to work on the deep half guard this month. Okay, so I'm going to structure the very first class. We're going to work on a flow. The flow is going to be built on the movement that I think is most essential, but also the most difficult. Like, you have to know how to do this to play deep half guard, but it's also going to take you a lot of repetition to install this. And so we build a flow around that. With the deep half guard, I would say that's probably the waiter sweep. That's not the number one sweep that you're going to hit all the time, but if you're going to be good at the deep half, you're going to need a waiter sweep. And so that's going to be the hardest part for you to learn. Let's build the flow around that. We're going to all learn the flow as a class. In that first class, we're all just going to work on getting this flow together.
Can you describe what you mean but when you say flow?
Sure. So like we'll do let's say we start, the guy seated in front of us. We're going to dip under, enter the half guard. So we're going to build an entry. We're going to make the movement to the next position, which is that waiter position. We're going to execute the sweep. We're going to work the pass, and we're going to finish in a dominant position. And then that's going to be the flow.
So sequence, more or less.
Yeah. And we're just going to all do it exactly the same way and get these reps in. You're a white belt or a blue belt. You don't know what you're doing anyway. Just do it like this for right now. And then you can explore on your own later. But let's get this flow down. Now, you're going to be here 8 times during the course of the month. I want us to be coming in and doing that flow to open class as our warm-up 25 times each class. So you're going to have 200 reps on this essential but sort of difficult, not natural movement 200 times by the end of the month. Okay, so that's how we're going to warm up class every class. Now, the next at least 2 classes, we're going to break it out into the 80-20 and the Pareto principle. So what are the 20% of techniques and ideas in the deep half that are going to yield 80% of your results? For the deep half, that's a really obvious A-B choice. I get in the deep half. He sits his weight this way. I kick out the back door. He sits his weight this way. I come over on that Bernardo over-under style pass. And so we're going to spend the next couple of classes on the 80-20. Then we're going to dive for the next couple of classes into the next steps. So now we're talking about maybe using the deep half to enter the legs, or using the deep half to trade out into another guard or whatever. And then in the last 1 or 2 classes, we're going to talk about defense and maybe even just stabilizing on the top while somebody's underneath you in deep half. So whatever the subject is, I'm going to follow that basic curriculum. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we go flow, 80-20, next steps, defense. And then we move on. Next month is leg locks. We're going to go flow, 80-20, next steps, defense.
When you do these flows, what is the uke's responsibility? Do they add variables? Do they add resistance at all? Or are they just a dummy? What's the
mitts? He's feeding the mitts to you. So to me, the most important, it's more important to teach the uke than it is to teach the guy performing the movement. Because if the uke gives you a different response, well, I would do something different if you did that. And so what I'm trying to do is program responses to specific, like if the uke's weight sits here, like let's go back to the deep half example. I got to teach the uke which place to sit his weight. Because if he sits his weight back and I should come up on the over under, but I'm trying to force the backdoor escape, well, you can't do the backdoor escape when he sits his weight here. You've got to do this one. And so if we're going to practice the backdoor escape, then I have to teach the uke where to sit his weight. And I feel like teaching the uke, it gets me a lot farther in progressing my students than trying to just teach the guy what to do. What are the moves? The moves are dependent on the reaction that you're getting from your opponent. So let's learn to feel weight distribution. Let's learn to feel leverage. And let's learn to be a counter fighter And I feel like that's going to like plug you into a deeper understanding of jiu-jitsu earlier.
What do you think is the highest percentage, maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, the most essential series from the deep half guard in a no-gi situation? Because in the gi, I would argue deep half guard is honestly a lot more effective because there is lapel grips, belt grips,
A lot more options.
pant grips. Like I find when I go deep half in no-gi, I have a couple things that I like to do from there. I really like the lockdown from there, honestly. But like you mentioned, the waiter sweep is crucial too. If you had to instill in your students like one core system or attack vector from deep half, what would it be?
We make the entry, whatever the entry looks like. We'll cover different entries over the course of the month. But we're going to make the entry. If I feel his weight sit back, I'm going to turn and go over under. If I feel the weight sit forward, I'm going to bump him and I'm going to slide out the back door, come up on a single or whatever sequence, slide out to the back, whatever sequence you're going to do right there. But the principle is that I'm coming out the back door. If your opponent is good and he's balanced and he's looking to counter, dig underhooks, set Kimura grips, that's when we're going to move into the waiter sweep. That's going to be included in that next steps part of it. So for me, I would say very easily 80% of the sweeps that, and I love the deep half. I'm a deep half lover. 80% probably, 75% of the sweeps that I get off of the deep half are either A or B, back and forth.
When you enter the deep half, what kind of positioning do you like with your feet?
So it depends on what I'm trying to do. Oh man, I'm just going to kick my feet up here on the show. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So, like I can use either leg to hook underneath the bottom and I'll lift the ankle and then create a tension down at the hip. So I get a long straight lever to the hip, but I can do that with either foot. If I'm going to do waiter sweep though, I don't want to be underneath with either foot. I want that foot in the middle, like resting side. But I don't put a lot of emphasis at all on like squeezing or like holding the guy in deep half. The trap comes from the tension on the lever of his leg. So the up pressure with my butterfly hook in the back of his ankle, and then the down pressure with the hand up near the hip gives me. Would you say
you generally favor scooping the same side hip as the leg that is being elevated, or the far side hip that isn't of the leg that's not being elevated?
I only scoop back to the far hip if I'm going to the waiter or if I'm thinking about entering legs. As long as I'm playing that AB sequence, that 80-20 sequence, I'm here on the same side leg. But if he settles in and I can't shift his balance and make him make a mistake, then I'll slide back and go to that other hip, scoop that leg, and then start moving towards a waiter.
Would you say that just like it sounds to me, just it's kind of where the conversation is going, that you're a big fan of deep half, like it's a pretty common guard as part of your game. Would you say that to have a solid deep half guard, you also have to have a solid reverse half guard? Because I find sometimes the guy will step over the head and now you're entering this reverse half guard position.
If the guy steps over my head, it's generally because I made a mistake with my posture. So like if I'm playing in the deep half and I have like any kind of roundness or like lack of connection back on the opposite thigh, it's going to be easy for him to step around. But if I have like a connection and a solid like open chest and I'm digging in on him, creating lever, he's not stepping around. I don't care who gave him his black belt. He's not sliding around. Mm-hmm. So it's a posture problem if people are sliding around. So what I would say is I'm going to correct that problem. And then I'm going to force him to counter to be good enough to counter the deep half by trying to dig for underhooks. And I'm going to try to funnel him into that next series that I do off of him countering with an underhook. That's generally how it goes for me. He gets up there. I can't sweep him either way. I can't take him with this waiter. Oh no, they're digging the underhook. Perfect. Now you fell right into the trap. That's the trap that I wanted him to do.
And if they do get an underhook on you, you said that's when you go to a waiter?
No. I was going to the waiter, But as I went to dig, I just can't get him off balance, and he takes that underhook maybe. Or I'm still like in this opening 80-20 right here, and he digs the underhook. When they dig the underhook, I take the arm that's holding the hip, and I slide under so both arms now are under the leg, even though you have the underhook. And now I slide down so that instead of holding the hip, now I'm holding the knee, and I'm pulling the knee outward. And then this hand slides down to the ankle, so I catch the ankle here on the inside of my elbow, and I create like a turn like this on this part of your leg, just on the lower part of your leg. And that creates, I call that 0.5. I actually never seen anybody do that, but that's by far, I mean, it's not even close. That's the number one sweep in my game. I do that pretty much every round. I hit somebody with that.
Is there footage of you doing this, like on YouTube? Have you shown this in a video somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, if there's footage of me rolling in the last 2 years, there's footage of me doing it. But yeah, it's like on my website. I don't know that I've got like a YouTube video on it at all. But I'll send you something if you want to see it.
Yeah, I actually can't really picture what you're saying, and I'd love to see it.
It's weird.
Yeah, I feel like with that deep half guard, if someone punches an underhook on you, it can be a huge problem. So would you say
when they go to the underhook, I'm telling you, when they go to the underhook, it's a trap for them if you have the right response, because their desire to hold the underhook, if they're holding an underhook, they don't have base anymore with that arm. So as they collapse that, as they sacrifice their own base, and I get like this on them. So I pull their knee this way and it drops them to their hip. And now I could just run the same A-B sequence, but I'm low down the leg instead of up underneath the hip.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if your classes are an hour and a half, is that how long your classes are?
Yeah, I'll run the teaching drilling portion is an hour, and then I turn on 26-minute rounds, and we'll stay until the last man's ready to go.
20 rounds?
Yeah, I'll put 20 on the clock.
So you're looking at like close to a 3-hour practice if people want to stay that long.
Yeah.
Nice. Brent. Yeah.
Somebody to 20, but somebody always makes it to 12.
Yeah. What makes, to you, in your opinion, what makes a great coach or a mentor?
Somebody that cares. I feel like a lot of people don't actually care, like how well their students do, or like, I don't want to say like they're just there for a paycheck, but they're just kind of going through the motions, or they're caught in a rut or whatever. But yeah, I think culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know what I'm saying? So like building a great culture is the most important thing that you can do as a coach. You got to, again, the only recipe is that you got to be here all the time for a long time. If I have an atmosphere that you don't really like being in, you're not going to fulfill that one major requirement. You're going to dip out because, you kind of go home stressed out, or you go home feeling bad about yourself, or this guy just gets on my nerves and I don't want to be around that much. And eventually you stop being there all the time, or eventually you stop being there for a long time. And nobody can get good without being there all the time for a long time. So to me, regardless of what like I laid out my 1-month curriculum, but I don't necessarily think that's the best way. That's just the way that I've done it. But if my culture sucks and nobody wants to be here, I could have the best strategy in the world and it's not going to matter. So building an important culture where people are excited to come and participate, and they're going to do it all the time, and they're going to do it for a long time, that's the most important factor. So having a listening ear and a caring culture are by far the most important things as a coach.
And can you just elaborate when you say like a good culture, a listening culture, like what is like a piece of advice you could give to improve gym culture?
I mean, a lot of it has to do with people's personalities, like they're just not like, they're so focused on winning that they don't listen well, or they're so focused on winning that they don't have enough like understanding for the dad who's just here to lose 30 pounds, and so a lot of it's just that. And for me, I know different people are different ways. Like our culture is not going to be for everybody. Like we're very informal. As you could probably guess, being at a 10th planet, so it's very informal.
We are too.
Yeah. And so like there's no oosing. It's not against the rules. You're free to oos, but you're not going to hear no oosing, bowing to pictures, calling me professor. My name's Brandon. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I showed up late. I'm sorry. Yo, I don't care. I'm just glad you made it. I just get excited when you show up. You're a grown man with responsibilities. Let jiu-jitsu work for you. Like you don't have to work for jiu-jitsu. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of the way that I try to do things. But some people don't like that atmosphere. They want to be like in a rigid.
It's true.
Yeah. And that's okay. But you're not going to be here all the time for a long time if that's what you want.
I find it can be difficult as a gym owner to have a culture that satiates everybody's personality. I think you said it really well. To build a good culture, it depends on people's personalities. And I really think that's true because like you said, some people come to the gym and they want that strict formal experience. I know people who have told me, hey, I chose this other gym because they're more formal. But most of the people at my gym are less formal. I try to have like a gym environment that I care about like good jiu-jitsu, current jiu-jitsu. I care about a lot about like athletes succeeding in competition. And a lot of our training, we do talk a lot about how we're going to structure our game for rules, even if people aren't competing in these tournaments. I feel like, if we're doing gi, it's like generally we're going to play to IBJJF rule set just because that is probably the most common rule set, right?
For sure.
So it can be difficult to make everybody happy. How do you go about like managing those different personalities, or do people just they'll either stay or they'll go?
Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, like we have the culture that we have. I'm very proud of the culture that we have. And if this makes sense for you, you'll stay. And if not, I'm not really worried about growing my gym. Like it's not something that's on my radar at all to grow it. I have like at one point we had close to like 400 students. And I was like, this is not what I don't want a big gym. I want the gym that I want. Like I need my gym to be like a sanctuary for me, not a place where I don't want to come here and work. I want to come and work hard, but I'm not coming here to do a job. Like this is what I'm passionate about and I need it to still feel that way. And so we started calling not like kicking people out, but like we quit posting from the gym social media page. We don't run ads. We're not running any deals. It's like, no, this is how much it costs and this is the way we structure it. There's no like beginners curriculum or anything like that. I just don't want my gym to be my job. I'll find another way to make money. And in the industry, there's plenty of ways to make money in jiu-jitsu. I know people will say that that's not true, but that's just people that don't know how to make money.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. There's tons of ways to make money in this career. So do you not have fundamentals classes or foundation classes?
No, I mean, I'm going to teach the classes the exact same way, no matter who shows up, because no matter what I show, whatever technique, I don't think that a thing becomes advanced or fundamental because it's a specific technique. I don't think there's a such thing as a advanced technique or a beginner technique. I think that the fundamentals are not a set of 36 moves that my granddad showed me. The fundamentals are base and balance and leverage and timing and weight distribution and patience. You know what I'm saying? And no matter what technique I show you, it's going to be built of those couple of things. And so my job when you show up to class is not to teach you where to put your hand, it's to teach you where to put your weight. And if I can teach you how to understand weight distribution a little bit better tonight, it doesn't matter what the subject matter was. If we were working on foot locks and you gained a better understanding of leverage, your mount also improved. Does that make sense?
So sounds like you're on the, you're big into like concepts, right? And I'm also, I sort of discovered that years ago that teaching people, it makes a lot of sense instead of just teaching moves or whatever, but teaching the concepts and the principles behind the moves that would actually allow the move to work, like off balancing someone, how to stay on top when you're on top, you know, understanding lever and fulcrum and wedge mechanics, things like this. Okay. That's great. You mentioned that you don't have a very formal school, and mine's not formal at all. Do you guys bow in? Do you line up? Do you bow out?
Nope. Kids class is going, kids class ends, and then I jump out and I go, all right, guys, let's start.
We're the same way. Do you bow the kids in and out?
Nope.
Do you find,
Nope.
so how does that work? Like, usually before class, if my kids come early, they want to run around and scream and like get out some energy. Do you just let them do that and then you call them into like a huddle, or how does that look?
Yep. Just let them go crazy. They're burning off energy. That's half the reason their parents are bringing them.
It's true.
You know what I mean? So let them burn off energy, and then they'll close it in with like a 1, 2, 3, 10th planet. And then
What does a kids class look like for you?
So I don't teach the kids class. Josh teaches the kids class. Once my children are old now. My son is in college and my daughter's about to turn 16. So they're not in kids class anymore. Once they moved out of the kids class, I moved out of teaching the kids class. So I haven't been in teaching that one for a while, but the classes are, he does a great job, man. I love Josh. He's a really valuable part of what we do here. So yeah, I really like the way he does everything.
Mm-hmm. I find, you know, a lot we've been talking about like this ecological approach lately with the task-based games. I'd say quite a bit of our adult training is task-focused games, even though I'm not one of the guys who thinks like techniques don't exist, or I don't think that explicit instruction holds no value, or that people can't, I don't think that people can't improve through explicit instruction, but I noticed with children, especially the ages of like 5 to 10, that's where I really see task-focused games becoming a huge part of effective training, because I find when you teach kids moves, they kind of, maybe at the teens, I find can handle explicit instruction well. You know, they're there because they care a lot of the time. They're more serious. They have more of a mature mind. Honestly, my age group 10 to 14, I teach them very similar to adults, but with the little kids, and you say you don't teach kids anymore, but I assume at one point in your career you did, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that what is a great way to keep a kid's attention in class so that, you know, they can actually absorb what you're showing them, instead of showing them something and then you know they sort of pretend to listen and in the end they can't really hit the move in a live situation?
Yeah, and you just get frustrated because I did such a great job explaining this and you don't get, but you nailed it already. It's like it's games for kids. Like I got to distract them from the fact that they're learning. And
totally.
I feel like that's sort of true with the adults as well. Like, so like you asked earlier about what does a class look like? So what a specific class will look like for me. And there's a lot of give and take on this. I have like 2 major categories. Sometimes we have class and sometimes we have practice. You know what I'm saying? If we have practice, it's heavy drilling, heavy live sparring, and ecological, I would just call that live sparring. That, you know, to me, that's the same thing if you're doing it right. So we're either going to have practice or we're going to have class. But regardless of which we have, again, let's use the deep half as an example, since we already done that. Okay, welcome to class, everybody. All right, everybody grab a partner. Here's the scenario. Your partner already has deep half. He has your leg in position. He's got everything set up the way he wants. Your job on top is to make sure that you don't end up on the bottom or stuck in a leg lock. Your job on the bottom is to sweep and stay on top or enter a leg, and you can't trade off to another guard. If you trade off to another guard, that's not wrong. That's just the end of the drill. and you'll flip top to bottom. And we'll open up with that, or a scenario like that, regardless of what the topic is. We'll open up with a scenario like that. That's the warm up. And I'll say, okay, we're just getting our bodies moving. Let's move it like 20% for this first 5 minutes or first 2 minutes. And then all right, new partner, same drill, 40%. New partner, same drill, 70%. Now you're fighting back a little bit, And what happens is that they create their own problems that need to be answered this way. And that makes you hungry for the information. And so when I start to now talk to you about potential solutions to the problem you're experiencing, the ground is fertile. You know what I'm saying? The soil is soft. You're ready for the information to be planted. When the teacher is ready, or when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And so what I'll try to do is cultivate a scenario where you want the answer instead of me just coming in and showing you how smart I am. Because you don't even really understand, especially if you're like a white or blue belt, you really don't even understand that this is a problem yet, probably. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a scenario where you need the problem presents itself to you. And now I'm going to give you the answer, because your Gatorade tastes better when you're thirsty, dude. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to make you thirsty, and then I'm going to pour Gatorade down your throat. And then at the end of class, we're going to go back in and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to present you with that same scenario that we opened with, a little live sparring. And you're going to have now a potential solution, or at least something, a place to go to try to answer this problem.
When I spoke with Kit Dale, he was one of the first guys who started talking about like task-focused games. He had mentioned how he likes to give his students, just like what you're saying, the problem first. He likes to create the demand before he gives the supply. And I've really started doing this. So instead of, if we do like a game, I don't show the solution. I basically keep it vague, and I let them experiment with the game first. And then I'll say, okay, this is a problem that's happening. This is a potential solution. Let's try again. So now the student knows, but they had to experience that first failure because, as he says, it creates that emotional arousal where you feel something fail. And now you're like, okay, I need to find a solution for this because there's a consequence to me failing. I lose the game, or I get submitted, or I get my guard passed, or whatever the game is. And I find with kids, this is super effective, because if I show a group of 5-year-olds how to do an armbar, I look up at them, they're looking over there, someone walks into the gym, they just stop watching me, and they just, somebody walked in. Cool. And then it's like, okay, guys, let's try this move. I look around and they don't give a fuck. Like, they don't care at all. But if you put them in the armbar position and you're like, okay, you're gonna get armbarred if you don't try. Like, so there's gonna be a consequence to you not trying. Immediately, they're like, "Fuck! I better look for a solution, or else I lose." And I find that with adults, same thing with like animals. They have that same instinct. I don't want to lose. I want to win in this. However, I'm competing, whether it's for food or for a mate or whatever. Adults are the same, and especially kids are the same, because their attention spans are so short. I think the task-focused games and that emotional arousal is such an effective way to get them to solve problems and to get them to learn, to get them to fail as many times as they can first. And then through that, they can, then they're like, oh, I remember when I did this, I got fucked up, so I can't do that anymore.
Well, like if you have a problem that you're not aware of, and I tell you that you have a problem, you're offended. But if you have a problem that you're not aware of, and you discover that you have a problem, you're motivated. And so what I want to do is I want to put you in a position to discover that you have a problem. And then you're motivated to find the answer. Now you care what I have to say.
Awesome. What is, okay, so what piece of advice would you give? Let's say one of your students is an up and comer and he comes to you, he's like, Brandon, I love Jiu Jitsu. I love what you've taught me, but one day I want my own school. I'm going to start angling my training and angling my career, my focus towards one day having an academy, what's a piece of advice you would give that person?
You need to learn a lot about business, probably. You need to learn how to make money, because otherwise you're going to get burned out. And I mean, I've just seen that happen so many times. It's like people think they're getting into the jiu-jitsu business to just come and do jiu-jitsu all day. But what you're really getting into the jiu-jitsu business to do is to run a business where you happen to teach jiu-jitsu at the business. You know what I mean? So what I would say is we need to learn how to make money and there's a pretty easy formula to make money. You know, I mean, easy is not right. Simple, not easy. And so, but you've got to get some experience learning how to do all the little tasks in the gym. You need to learn how to do those, and then you need to learn which ones you hate, and you need to start hiring those out. So, yeah, I would tell them they need to learn how to run a business. Otherwise, they're going to be broke, and they're going to eventually either be unmotivated, which leads to bad culture and lack of success, or they're going to get unmotivated and just move on to the next thing and be like, the jiu-jitsu business is too hard. Like, nah, just the way you ran business doesn't work.
This is a question. I don't know how you're going to feel about it. Is rubber guard still relevant in jiu-jitsu, in the current jiu-jitsu landscape and MMA?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I don't think it's necessary, though, if that makes sense.
Why?
Like, there's plenty of jiu-jitsu to learn. You don't have to learn the rubber guard. You'd be an insane black belt and know nothing about the rubber guard. But that's not true for every position, right? Like, you can't be an insane black belt and suck at passing the guard. So you're going to have to learn to pass the guard. But you can get as far as you want to get and know nothing about the rubber guard. But let's take a guy like Ben Eddy, for example. You familiar with Ben?
Yep.
You see him?
Hindu-Latine.
You see him do his Hindu-Latine thing?
It's fucking insane.
Yeah. You watch Ben Eddy tap, get 4 of those in an 80cc open in the advanced division, adult advanced. Can you watch that and walk away with the opinion that doesn't work? He just tapped John Combs with it. Does it work? Yes or no? Well, okay, it works. So then is the problem the rubber guard, or is the problem your understanding of the rubber guard and your use of the rubber guard? Obviously, the rubber guard is not the problem, or John Combs wouldn't have tapped to it, right? And John's my boy, so I'm sorry to use him as an example, but you know what I'm saying? Like, John's good. He wins 80cc opens. Why is he tapping to something that's not real? Those two things don't make sense together, right? So is it necessary? No. Is it effective? Yes. Is it effective in everybody's hands? No. I don't know nothing about guns. You put a gun in my hand, I'm not going to do very well in the shooting range. You know what I'm saying? But one of my black belts, Eric Al, is one of the best shooters in the country. He could win a shooting contest with a BB gun. You know what I'm saying? So in the right circumstances, in the right hands, it's very, very effective. And I think we have plenty of evidence that can lead us to that conclusion. But for whatever reason, there's just like a lot of, we fear what we don't understand, I believe.
In ADCC, is there a rule change that you would like to see, or anything about the rules that you aren't happy with?
There's nothing that I'm not happy with the ADCC rule set, but there are things that I would adjust. I don't know
Like
about
what?
change. Adjust. I think they need to have a hard definition of what stalling means. I think that's the major issue that they have right now.
You think they're too aggressive with the stalling calls?
Yeah, you could be super aggressive with it, but it's still arbitrary. Like, it's still subjective. Like, there's no hard definition of this means stalling. So I think that they just need to, whoever gets that right first, whichever organization fixes stalling first is going to shoot to the top. That's what I think. And I think the ADCC's getting there, but they're not there.
What about IBJJF? What criticisms do you have of their rule set?
A myriad. I don't think advantages are good for the sport.
I'm the same way. You know, I love winning matches, and if it means I have to exploit the advantage system, that's what it is. But I've also been on the losing side, and it's fucking ridiculous because the IBJJF, oppositely compared to ADCC, it kind of rewards passivity in ways. You know, it will reward you to sit back on an advantage lead. There's no incentivization to initiate, whereas in ADCC, if you don't initiate, you're losing.
Yeah. Well, I guess my feelings about the IBJJF rule set are that if you don't look at it as a professional rule set, then it's fine. But if you try to look at it as a professional rule set, it doesn't make any sense as a professional rule set. So, you know, I think we just say it's an amateur rule set, but then, and this is almost not even IBJJF's fault. So I'm like not mad at IBJJF about it, but like we set an amateur organization, and I don't mean amateur in terms of like unsophisticated necessarily. I mean just in terms of like what's going to be a good product for viewers, what's going to generate excitement, what's going to generate money. That's what I mean in terms of professional. Not is it good or are they good at it or bad? They're very good at what they do, like undeniably, probably the best at what they do. But it's not going to move us into professional jiu-jitsu. That's not the vehicle that does that. It's an amateur tournament. You pay to enter it. You have a rule set that doesn't really penalize lack of activity. It incentivizes you to slow the game down and stop movement and exciting things from happening at the end with the advantage system. So God bless IBJJF. We need an organization like the IBJJF, but that is not going to be what gets everybody paid for sure. That's not the one.
Do you have a favorite rule set? If you're going to watch, let's say you're going to watch jiu-jitsu, do you have a favorite rule set that you think is the most crowd pleasing?
Well, I got a lot of the rules. I like a variety of rule sets, so I gotta say that out front. I think that the variety of rule sets is good for jiu-jitsu. I don't think it's holding jiu-jitsu back. I think it's helping expand jiu-jitsu, and I think it's helping expand the skill set of the community at large. So like some guys are really good in one rule set, not so good in another. And I think that's probably good. I really like, people don't like this, but I will say what I got to say. I think combat jiu-jitsu is the most fun jiu-jitsu to watch, especially if you're sitting beside the mat. If you can hit people, that's more exciting. Like the major criticisms with EBI are that, oh man, you can stall to get to, people game the system and they get to overtime. That's a valid criticism. That's a good criticism, and it's true. You don't do that in combat jiu-jitsu because if you slow the game down, you get popped in the mouth. And so you just move right through the next position. It's truer to the essence of what jiu-jitsu was, quote unquote, supposed to be. So I like, as a viewer, combat jiu-jitsu is the most fun to watch. As a participant and as a fan of sports jiu-jitsu, I really like this AIGA rule set. I think it's super cool. Very unique, which is probably the thing that I like most about it. It's unique. It puts the wrestlers at a way closer to a level playing field. So I think it allows more of the diverse styles of grappling to come to the table and compete against one another. So I really like that AIGA rule set. The PGF rule set to me is the best way to have an event that's fun to watch. So yeah, I like the ADCC rules. If you're going to do points, I think ADCC is probably the way to go. Mm-hmm. But I like AIGA presents a league format. PGF presents a league format. And I think that if we want to take professional jiu-jitsu to the next level, that it's going to have to be in a league format.
Do you prefer overtime in like a golden score or like the way Fight Passes started to do it, like a points-based overtime? Or do you like the EBI style overtime?
I think all the criticism on the EBI overtime could be solved if there was a way to not have to send this to overtime. Like, okay, it went to a draw technically, but you were mounted for 8 minutes. We're not going to overtime. And I think that would solve all of the criticisms that people have about just that one simple change would solve all those criticisms. Like, there are times when a draw is exciting or a draw really was like, dude, I don't know, we can't pick a winner. You need overtime for something like that. And I think having an overtime that doesn't involve any subjectivity, it's just about who can get the submission, I think that's a really good way to do it. So I think Eddie's really like forward thinking, like really, really forward thinking on that. But I think that we need to figure out a way to stop stalling from a defensive standpoint, when that rule set. And his answer to that was, well, what if they hit each other? That's a pretty good answer. They'll stop. But a lot of the jiu-jitsu community just not that interested in combat jiu-jitsu. It just doesn't appeal to them for whatever reason, which is kind of weird to me, but it is what it is. I think that if you want to do an EBI rule set without throwing strikes in there and still need to solve the problem, we need a couple of judges off to the side that go, okay, look, that's a mollywop. Like if you've seen finishers tournaments, that's what they do. They call it the mollywop rule. Like, dude, you got mollywopped. You didn't earn overtime. The other guy wins. And I think that would solve a lot of it. Eddie's objection to that is that it allows subjectivity into the situation. But if you have strong definitions of stalling, and you can, like that, in basketball, dude, if you get hacked, that's a foul. In football, we know what holding is. We know what offsides is. Like, we understand these things. They're clearly defined. We need to, whoever clearly defines stalling first is going to shoot to the top of the food chain, I think.
Mm-hmm. If you had your choice to start on the back or start in the spider web to attack, what would you choose?
Spider web.
Interesting choice. Do you think jiu-jitsu in the Olympics would be a good thing or a bad thing for the sport?
I don't know. I would have to talk to some old judo heads and get their answer on that. Because I think there's probably a lot of nuance to that. Because like we can see how it's changed judo. Some people like it. Some people don't like it. I don't know if I have a hard opinion one way or the other as far as if it would be good or bad. I think increased exposure, a more like formal funnel and path from elementary school to Olympics. I think all of that could be really good for the sport, but it could also, I told you I like the variety of rule sets. It could also like force us all down one path, and suddenly judo doesn't know how to wrestle. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's been good for judo. Mm-hmm. So,
and I guess just like any other form of grappling, you would have to decide what rule set we're going to go with. Is it going to be like an IBJJF? Is it going to be like an ADCC? These are completely different sports, really. And
yeah,
I don't want to see the sport become like a watered down version where, okay, you can't do these techniques because it's Olympic jiu-jitsu or whatever. Like you mentioned with judo, how it really changed judo. I don't really want to see that happen to jiu-jitsu, but I do think, would the exposure increase? Perhaps. Honestly, I don't really think a lot of people care about Olympics, at least not as much here in Canada, since they made it so that like that the NHL players can't go in the hockey. Like Olympics used to be huge in Canada, but then they took out the NHL players. Now it's only like amateur players, junior players or whatever. So now it's like nobody really cares about the Olympics up here. And I don't know if it would bring a lot of I don't know if it would bring as many eyes to jiu-jitsu as we think. I think ADCC is kind of accomplishing that.
Dude, I was just about to say that. I kind of feel like ADCC is the Olympics for our sport right now.
Oh, 100%.
So I don't know that we need the Olympics. And I don't know that we necessarily want the Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm open to how that plays out. Like I'm agnostic to how that plays out, to be honest with you. I'm going to do my thing. It doesn't really matter if it goes to the Olympics.
Is TRT cheating?
Depends on how old you are and if you're still competing. Like, if you're 50 years old and you're taking TRT and you're not competing, it's not cheating.
What if you are?
Then it's cheating.
Cheating as in it should be outlawed?
I don't know. I don't know if it should be outlawed. I think that we should I just wish that everybody had to be honest. That's what I wish. Like, because I don't mind competing against somebody that's on steroids, but I do want to know if you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you gotta tell everybody. I think maybe we should just go, hey, listen, just fill out this form. All we need to know is your dosage, and then you're in. I would be okay with that. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of nuanced.
Because some people are using it as like a form of therapy because they're older, or some people, not as many as we would think, but some people do have, low testosterone or whatever, and it makes sense for them to do it. And then other people's are just getting juiced up at like taking really really big amounts and then trying to go win tournaments and then cycling off. Or some people are like 20 years old and they're juicing a lot, and it's like, man, you've got like natural you've got the fountain of youth already on your side. So I would say it's kind of like a spectrum in terms of how much people are using.
Listen, if it's against the rules in the tournament you're doing, then there's no question about it, right? But if it's explicitly not, like, let's just use ADCC as an example. It's explicitly not against the rules. It's explicitly been said, we're not going to disqualify you for it. Well, then it's not really cheating.
True.
It's not really cheating. But does it feel like cheating to me? Yeah. But is it? No. Does it feel like it? Yeah.
Especially if you sign up in a tournament and like you said, the rules say it's not cheating, then it isn't. It's kind of like, if I don't know if you watched that Aljamain Sterling grappling match when he's complaining about the guard playing, and it's like, this is sport jiu-jitsu. He's like, you can't do that in a street fight. It's like, why did you even agree to this fight? Like, why did you take it if you don't have any intention of passing the guard, and you think that, like, that you won just because you didn't get subbed or just because you were on top? Like, sport jiu-jitsu doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that was I thought, a masterclass by Aljamain Sterling on how to get attention.
How to get attention? It actually was. Okay, I just got a couple of questions. Let's just talk current jiu-jitsu competition right now. A couple matches just got announced by Flow. So the first one I want to talk about is Dante Leon and Diego Pato. Who do you think takes that?
Dante Leon, I think, is the most underrated jiu-jitsu player in the world.
Dude, he's so fucking good. And a good Canadian too, as far as I know. He's Dante Leon is like, his game is incredible, and it's awesome to see how, first of all, how well-rounded he is, but you can see visual improvement over the last couple of years, how high level he is now. He's not like a big guy. I mean, he's jacked he's fucking huge in terms of, he's very strong and whatever, but he's not tall. He's not like a giant guy in stature, but this is a guy who just won. Didn't he win the, did he win the heavyweight no-gi worlds?
Yeah, 180. No, I think it was gi, wasn't it?
Not in the gi, no-gi, wasn't it? No-gi.
Okay. I don't remember. I didn't see any of the matches. But anyway, yeah, at 180 pounds. He wins the WNO title at 155. He does something else like the next weekend at 170. If you're between 155 and 185 pounds, Dante Leon is the boogeyman. I think he's I think he's the man. I think he's got a strong chance to win ADCC this year. I think he really might be the guy to do it.
Yeah, like I know Tonin heel hooked him a couple of years ago. I just don't see that happening anymore. I think he's
time ago though, doesn't it? Like,
yeah,
feels like forever.
but then you got a guy like Diego Pato, who is honestly like low key, like seemingly one of the best leg lockers in the world. You know, he's got a nasty Z lock. His diagonal Ashi game is insane. And this is a really interesting match for me because I think Dante probably has like a strength advantage, but both of these guys are not the biggest guys in the world, and Diego is definitely, you know, a guard that is seemingly unpassable. The match really, really interests me, and I think that aggressiveness from Dante Leon and just like putting the pressure on Diego is kind of his key to victory here.
Yeah, and they're going to be playing under that WNO rule set, which is basically a sub-only rule set with judges. And I think that Dante would just never stop coming forward. Pato's one of my favorites to watch. So I almost feel like weird picking against Pato in this particular matchup. I'm not picking against him. I'm picking for Dante. Let's say that. So yeah, I'll take Dante in that matchup.
Do you think Yuri has a chance against Gordon?
No.
Me neither. Who do you think could beat Gordon right now?
Like, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I don't see anybody in the heavyweight class that's on his level at all.
No.
I mean, you know, we're pushing the UFC Fight Pass is pushing this Mason Fowler and Nicky Rod storyline with Gordon, but I love Mason, but I don't see any way that he beats Gordon. If for no other reason than Gordon's just so much bigger than he is, you know?
Yeah. And I just don't see Gordon getting submitted. You know, maybe he could get like edged out on points, or if it's like an EBI overtime, you got a guy like Mason or Nicky Rod on your back, maybe anything can happen, I guess. But like in a match, to be able to control Gordon, to isolate him and isolate a limb and actually immobilize him, like no one has even come close at this point. The only reason Pena was able to get on his back was because Gordon used to attack the saddle, and Pena, you know, had that funky misdirectional escape. You don't even see Gordon go into the saddle anymore. You don't even see him attack legs anymore. He just wants to smash people from half guard now. So positionally, I just don't see how anyone could actually submit him.
Yeah, well, resume-wise, Gordon's the best there's ever been, in my opinion, especially if you're just going to talk about no-gi. You know, if you want to start bringing gi accomplishments in, then we can start making some other arguments for Hajer or Marcelo or whoever, right? But if you're just talking about no-gi, he's got the only resume that matters, right? I just can't see anybody beating him in the way that he sets the matches up. Like if you're talking about a 20-minute match and you're going to let him cook the first 10 minutes, you're not going to beat Gordon like that. Now, if you're talking about a 6-minute match, maybe there's people that can beat him just on physicality and lack of, like, they don't even need technique as much. They're just pushing the physicality and the strategy. Maybe something like that. But even then, I would have a hard time like actually figuring it out. I mean, just for example, his match with Nicky Rod at Fight Pass Invitational, you know, Nicky was able to avoid him, and I don't even say avoid, because they stayed relatively engaged for 10 minutes, but Nicky was able to put him in some danger, popped his foot pretty good, ends up in overtime, and I don't think Nicky stalled to that overtime. Like, I don't think it was a situation where he laid back and just tried to survive to get a shot in overtime. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty close under that rule set, but Gordon still got him. So even Nicky doing some of his best work right there in a rule set that Gordon didn't prefer, he was still able to get him out of there. So I can't see anybody, particularly the way that he's been setting up these WNO matches, I just can't imagine who it would be.
All right, last question. ADCC Worlds is this year. Who's going to win the absolute title?
Well, it won't be Gordon, right? Like, are we taking Gordon out of the mix?
Yeah, because I guess, you know, he can't like potentially fight himself. So I guess they can't let him do that.
Yeah.
He wants to do his own division though, which is like, it's funny how they let him do that, but it's cool as well.
Yeah, do your thing. Well, if we're taking Gordon out of the mix, I think we start looking at maybe Miragali, Nicky Rod. Those are probably my top two, I would say.
I tend to agree. I think Miragali, you know, what we've seen out of him is just incredible, especially if it's just in no-gi as well. You know, coming from a gi background, I think Miragali has a good chance of winning it. And then what? You're going to have Gordon and versus Miragali? Like, these guys have said that they won't fight each other, but they kind of have to if that's how it plays out.
Isn't that funny, though? Like, how that discussion has changed? Like, oh, Miragali has only been training no-gi a couple of years. It's remarkable what he's done. Like, imagine having said that 8-10 years ago. Like, you would have been like, of course he's doing great. He's the best jiu-jitsu player in the world in the gi. But now, like, oh man, he's only been doing no-gi for 3 years. This is wild to see. Dude, he was the best jiu-jitsu player in the world in the gi in his division. Of course he's doing great in no-gi. It's just crazy how that narrative has changed. It used to be you had to do the gi to get good at no-gi.
Yeah.
And now it's like, yo, that gi is not going to really help you all that much when it goes to no-gi. You're the best in the gi. You're still going to need 3 years to start getting into the discussion as best in no-gi. Isn't that crazy?
It is, yeah. Cool, man. Thank you so much for your time. Before we get out of here, is there anything you'd like to plug? Any social media or products or anything you sell?
I got plenty of stuff to sell. You can just go to my website, brandonmc.ninja. But that's not what I came to talk to you guys about today. We're going to talk about April the 21st through the 26th. The PGF is going to be doing season 6 in Las Vegas. And we have a big announcement dropping in the next couple of weeks about who's going to be involved and what the prize money is. And I think you guys are going to want to tune in. So that's all I can tell you right now. April 21st through 26th, 170 pounds.
Sweet. That's exciting. Well, BMac, thank you very much. I just want to say before I let you go, thank you guys for supporting the show. Check out the links on the bottom if you're looking for EJJP merchandise, if you want to donate to the show or subscribe to my online academy. I really appreciate you listening to this episode. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I love you. Thank you.
And remember, the Essential Jiu Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. Take care, guys.